So one view might be that the Cabinet decision was predicated on the basis that...
We'll have more testimony from Rupert Murdoch on the phone hacking investigation live on C-SPAN 2 tomorrow at 5 a.m. Eastern. The House is coming in now to debate a couple of bills, including legislation that establishes a permanent government transparency board. And later on, Democrats plan to force a vote on the Senate's 2-year highway bill.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our guest chaplain, Reverend Matthew Barnes, from the Capital Commission, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Heavenly Father, thank you for civil government and the power that you invest in each of the members in the People's House. With that power comes tremendous responsibility and sacrifice. We know that your Son, Jesus, had all power in heaven and in earth. Yet he condescended to our low estate in a grand act of service to mankind. Truly, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. We ask that such noble acts of courage, commitment, and compassion be evident in the men and women leading the United States. Help them to remember that they serve their fellow citizens and are accountable to you, the Almighty God. In the midst of this sacrificial service, may they make time to spend with their families and with you. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. And pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Stutzman. Without objection, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Stutzman, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's opening prayer was given by my good friend and mentor, Matthew Barnes, who serves as chaplain at the Indiana State House and also serves as State Director for Capital Commission in Indiana. Mr. Speaker, I'm only a freshman in this body, but it doesn't take a seasoned veteran to know that our government is made up of human beings who need wisdom, discernment, and grounding in the truth of God's Word. A true servant leader, Matt has made it his mission to serve, teach, and pray for those who are in position of authority. In 2004, he was called to serve Indiana's elected officials. Matt ministers in love, knowing that he serves a God whose will is good and gracious and whose law is truth. In my time in the state legislature, I saw Matt give comfort and counsel to so many of my colleagues. His heart for the members of that body is inescapably clear. Matt and his wife, Miriam, have 3 wonderful children, Sarah, Micah, Emma. Their work and sacrifice have made Indiana a better place. I'm honored that my friend has been able to join us today. I'll yield back.
Tennessee. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Tennessee seek recognition? The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise today to honor a woman of incredible strength and courage, one who has inspired and personally pushed numerous young ladies to achieve beyond their wildest dreams. I am, of course, talking about the record-setting leader of the Lady Vols basketball team, Pat Head Summitt. Now, I could stand here and read off a list of the stats and accomplishments on the courts, and they are many and quite impressive. But, Madam Speaker, I believe that we would miss the true scope of Pat Summitt's impact not only on the sport, but on the lives of her players and so many who have watched her career. While the world saw her impact on the sport, her focus was always on teaching young women about life and using their shared passion of basketball as the tool. Her student athletes were always students first. They left the University of Tennessee equipped for a successful life. and she instilled in her players the work ethic that she learned on a dairy farm in Henrietta, Tennessee. It was her father's values of determination and hard work and her years of holding on among her brothers and her family that inspired the toughness and drive to achieve the winning attitude. Now the legendary Pat Summitt will inspire countless Americans off the court as she raises awareness in her personal fight against Alzheimer's. One item from her well-known list of a definite dozen is to be a competitor. Those of us that have admired her for years know that she is a true competitor and is ready for the fight. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to remember the 1.5 million Armenians, men, women, and children who were massacred under the Ottoman Empire at the beginning of the 20th century. Each year, Armenians throughout the world mark April 24th as Genocide Remembrance Day by honoring those who perished from 1915 to 1923, and I join my friends and colleagues in remembering the victims today. It's important to raise awareness about the Armenian genocide not only because it's an undeniable chapter in world history, but also because learning more about this horrific tragedy underscores the importance of eliminating intolerance and bigotry wherever it occurs. Armenian Americans living in my home state of Rhode Island have made significant contributions through their leadership in business, law, academia, government, and the arts. As a co-sponsor of House Resolution 304, I strongly believe that the time has come for the United States government to recognize this atrocity for what it was, genocide. I join my colleagues today in recognizing the victims of the Armenian genocide, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, our nation's Social Security system is sadly approaching bankruptcy. The Secretary of the Treasury spoke on Monday, revealing that Social Security benefits are expected to become insolvent in only 21 years. 3 years sooner than was projected just last year. In a recent article in the Washington Post, Emily Miller wrote, quote, "Thanks in large part to Mr. Obama's insistence, the program's 2011 deficit of $148 billion was the second largest single-year deterioration since 1983. If Washington doesn't do anything to address the program's imbalance, the trustees say it will be raising the payroll tax to 16.7% to cover the gap," end of quote. This administration continues to take money out of the Social Security Fund, shifting it for programs we cannot afford. It's past time for Congress to act and stop Washington's out-of-control spending, which will ultimately result in higher taxes, more debt, destroying jobs, and putting senior citizens at risk. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism. Welcome South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson to Washington for Supreme Court oral arguments.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York rise? The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You had to look into their faces and right into their eyes to see the worry that these young people had. Just yesterday, I convened a roundtable of students at Damon College in my district, and we talked about the biggest concern on their mind, and it wasn't their final exams. It was the knowledge that in 3 short months, if this body does not act, these young people will face a doubling of the interest rate on their student loan from 3.4% to 6.8%. These young people were afraid. They're concerned. I asked them what it would mean to them. One man who already has $120,000 in debt now said he probably would have to leave in order to start paying back his debt. One woman said she'd probably have to take a 4th job on top of her 3rd job. Another junior said he probably would not be back next year. Heartbreaking stories, ladies and gentlemen, but we can stop it from happening. You got to ask what's wrong with this picture. Banks are lending to each other at about 0%. You can get a home mortgage loan for 3.9%. Why are our young people who are doing nothing other than having a shot at the American dream that each one of us had by getting a good education, why are they going to be strapped with this debt? I ask unanimous consent to, I'll conclude this time, I ask all of us to join in asking the House of Representatives, the leadership, to allow us to vote on this bill.
Expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today once again to express my concern about the EPA, their red tape, and its effect on jobs and the economy in my home state of Illinois. In fact, a recent study found that the rules proposed by the EPA could destroy more jobs in Illinois than in any other state. According to this study, more than 38,000 Illinois jobs are at risk. These new layers of red tape would especially be harmful in their impact on the price of electricity, raising costs for small businesses and forcing them to lay off employees. In Illinois, we could see electricity prices rise as much as 18%, a huge burden on small businesses already struggling to keep their doors open. Time and again, I've heard from small businesses in my district who are concerned about this regulatory onslaught. But House Republicans are not standing idly by. With bipartisan support, we've passed a half-dozen pieces of legislation that would rein in the EPA and help protect American jobs. Unfortunately, as with so many of the bills that we've passed to create jobs and spur economic growth, the Senate has refused to act. Perhaps another reminder as what is at stake is finally spur them to action. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
To address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me get this straight. My good friends on the Republican side are really interested in cutting taxes for the wealthy. But when it comes to maybe cutting the taxes that students would be paying in the student loans that they have by $1,000 more a year, they're not nearly so interested. Well, let me read to you a posting to my Facebook from a young woman that really hits home. She wrote, quote, "Going to college was the worst decision of my life. I hate to say it, but it's true. I did everything right. I graduated high school early at the top of my class. I got all my core courses out of the way at community college, then transferred to a four-year college, but I couldn't afford it and had to just stop before my last year. It's the biggest regret of my life that I couldn't afford college. I'm not lazy, I'm not stupid, but I had the misfortune of being born poor." Well, Madam Speaker, it's time for us to make sure that the poor students in our country have the right to go to college and to see it as a good decision, not a wrong decision. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I rise today to congratulate the recent victories of two Plano High School teams, the 2012 Plano West Girls Soccer State Champions and the 2012 Plano Senior High School World Quest National Champions. Last weekend, the Plano West Girls Soccer team defeated Katy 7 Lakes, earning the school its 5th state title. Under first-year coach Carly Phillips, who won the school a state title in 2002, the soccer program has excelled and continued in its success. And last month, the Plano Senior High School World Quest team successfully defended its national championship title. For the second year in a row, this team placed first in the national academic competition that tests high school students' knowledge of international affairs, geography, history, and culture. Congratulations to these two stellar teams. That's a way to represent the great state of Texas. God bless you, and I salute you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, in these tough economic times, it's critical that Congress work to make quality higher education available to all Americans, and I say to all Americans. We know that investing in education and is investment in our future, an investment in the strength of America. By the year 2018, 63% of all American jobs will require some level of higher education. Sadly, if Congress does not act soon, the interest rate for student loans will double from 3.4 to 6.8, higher than the home loans. This will cause thousands of dollars in new debt for more than 7.4 million American students. Unfortunately, the Republicans in Congress have refused to go forward with legislation that would prevent this crisis. And some Republican leaders have openly criticized student loans who graduate with college debt. It's time that Congress work together, and I say it's time that Congress work together to help middle-class families, not just the wealthiest few. We must pass legislation that straightens the Pell program and prevents increase in student loan rates. Thank you, President Obama, for taking the lead in helping our future generation and leaders of tomorrow.
I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to talk about the corruption, the fraud, the waste within GSA, an agency that has nearly a $10 billion slush fund that they hide from the American taxpayers every single year. Today I'm going to be introducing a bill that will request transparency on an annual basis, show an annual audit so the American taxpayers can see exactly where this waste is going and hold this agency accountable. We're going to hold another hearing on the issue to make sure that the waste stops and that we actually start selling off some of the buildings that are sitting vacant right now today. An opportunity for Republicans and Democrats to actually come together just getting rid of waste. And at the same time that we sell the properties and redevelop the things that we aren't using, put people back to work. Madam Chair, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was observed last week on April 19th. The theme of this year's Holocaust Remembrance Day was choosing to act, offering an important reminder of the sacredness of human life and the need for all of us to stand against evil. The Holocaust represents one of the darkest periods in human history and illustrates the worst of human behavior. Yet some still deny the events of the Holocaust ever occurred. It is no wonder that Israel is extremely concerned with the development of nuclear weapons in Iran, putting these arms in the hands of radicals who have shown no respect for human life or basic human rights. We must support and stand by Israel during these dangerous times. We must always keep in the back of our minds the history of the Jewish people. Understanding the history helps us understand their concerns and feelings about what currently is going on in the world. On Holocaust Remembrance Day, we are reminded that the Jewish people have had first-hand experience with true evil, and we must work to ensure that such atrocities do not happen again. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, request for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the regulators are going after America's farms. Now they are considering prohibiting kids from working on farms. Growing up on a farm teaches kids valuable lessons and a strong work ethic. Now the federal government is contemplating prohibiting kids from doing chores on their uncle's farm, including the storing, marketing, and transporting of farm product raw materials. According to the Department of Labor, prohibiting places of unemployment would include county grain elevators, grain bins, feedlots, stockyards, and livestock exchanges. Anyone under 16 would not be allowed to not drive any type of power equipment, including tractors. So if the farmer wants to hire a young boy to help him move some hay, it'd be a crime. People who know nothing about farms are trying to stop educating our future farmers because a lot of these farm kids grow up to be farmers. Now we're faced with the problem of the average farmer in the United States is over 50. If the regulators have their way and young people are shut out, there will be a lost generation of American farmers. This ought not to be, but that's just the way it is.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? And the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, just over 3 years ago, Continental Connection Flight 3407 crashed in my western New York community and that of Congresswoman Kathy Hochul. Sadly, all aboard were killed. In the wake of this tragic crash, the families of the passengers on board Flight 3407 joined together and successfully fought for the inclusion of strong airline safety provisions in the Federal Aviation Administration's reauthorization, which was signed into law in August of 2010. Crew member screening and qualifications, in addition to pilot certification requirements, were factors that, if properly monitored, could have prevented the crash. We must see to it that the FAA follows through on the implementation of the reforms passed by this Congress. Mr. Speaker, keeping our flying public safe should be a top priority. I am committed to continuing the fight on behalf of the memory of those we lost on that day, and I urge my colleagues to join our efforts to achieve safer skies for all Americans. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to take note of something that occurred in this body, the other body, and on June 16th will occur in Arizona. Brian Terry died more than a year ago as a Border Patrol agent serving his country on the Arizona border. He was shot and killed by smugglers with weapons that ultimately came from the United States and went across the border under the Operation Fast and Furious program. That's controversial, but there's no controversy that Brian Terry lived and exemplified the American spirit in serving his country in the military and then as a Border Patrol agent. On June 16th, that Border Patrol station will open. On June 16th, thanks to action here in the House weeks ago and in the Senate today, we will in fact name it after Brian Terry. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute. Advise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, 97 years ago, the Ottoman Empire orchestrated a murderous campaign that resulted in the death of over 1.5 million Armenian men, women, and children, and forced hundreds and thousands into exile. Growing up in Fresno, California, the place William Saroyan, a great American author of Armenian descent, called home, I heard the stories of this tragic time between 1915 and 1923. The sons and daughters of survivors time and time again told the stories of their families. The facts are clear. What happened 97 years ago can only be called in one name: genocide. The first genocide of the 20th century. And yet, after nearly a century, the House of Representatives and current and past American presidents have refused to recognize the Armenian genocide as such. We cannot wait for a convenient moment, for it's not a convenient truth. Man's inhumanity to mankind never is. Now is the time to pass House Resolution 304 that I am a co-sponsor of and formally recognize the Armenian genocide. I yield the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
Thank you. I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This past Friday, I spoke to the graduates of Pepperdine University School of Public Policy. I was the commencement address. And like many other students who will be graduating this year, they are determined and eager to take on the difficult challenges of this world. Unfortunately, many of them are leaving college with a mountain of student debt. Debt that can keep them from pursuing opportunities which may not yield short-term financial rewards, but could make our world a better place to live. You don't have to look far to find these amazing young people. Our offices are filled with them. Others have said it today, but I'm going to say it again. We must pass legislation to prevent the interest rate on Stafford loans from doubling this July 1st. And it's also why I've introduced H.R. 4286, which would allow students to begin paying back their federal loans 12 months after they graduate instead of 6. And I hope I have support on that. This is common sense legislation that will allow new grads the chance to start their careers without the burden of monthly student loan payments. I yield back. No time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Nevada rise? Gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, despite the fact that President Obama took swift action to punish those responsible for the outrageous abuse at the GSA, some in Washington, like Junior Senator from Kentucky, are looking to score cheap political points by attacking Las Vegas and Nevada's tourism industry. These Republicans are trying to bring back the last administration's so-called blacklist of resort cities like Las Vegas and Reno, prohibiting federal agencies from traveling to Nevada to hold conferences and seminars. This policy has damaged the reputation of my state, hurt our economy, and killed jobs. Thanks to President Obama, this blacklist was lifted and discrimination against Las Vegas and Reno was ended. It's time that we make this policy permanent, and that's why I'm going to introduce legislation to prohibit the blacklisting of any city in America. This means discrimination against cities like Las Vegas and Reno will be illegal. illegal. Las Vegas wasn't the problem. The irresponsible behavior of the GSA was. I urge my colleagues to stand up for jobs and join me in co-sponsoring this legislation.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Hawaii seek recognition?
Thank you.
With unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I represent Hawaii, the youngest state in this union. And many of our people immigrated to our wonderful state within the last 100+ years. When they immigrated, they came to work on plantations for most part, and they knew one thing: for their children to be better, to get ahead, they needed an education, and there's always been a very strong belief that education was the answer. This July, we will see the most popular student loan increase in their interest rate from 3.4 to 6.8%. It will affect 7.4 million students, and it will mean $1,000 a month more for each and every one of them. Think about it, Madam Speaker. We say the students are our future. We say we need them. We need them to be in college so that we will be the great nation that we once were. Then I ask you, why is it that we haven't taken up the legislation to again freeze the loan rates, keep it at 3.4%, so we can have our future and we can show these students that we really believe in them and invest in them? Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back to balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? The gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge a milestone reached by Marcus Alexander. He is the first African American to become commander of the Texas A&M Corps of Cadets. Currently, Marquis is a corporal in the U.S. Marine Reserves and a rising senior majoring in international studies. Congratulations. The history of African Americans at Texas A&M University dates back to the founding of the institution. African Americans in the Texas legislature advocated for and supported the passage of the Moral Land Grant Act in 1866, which established the A&M College of Texas between 1876 and 1963. African Americans worked at A&M as laborers, maids, custodians, and various other support staff. However, they were prohibited from attending as students and faculty until 1963. It's been a long time, but here we are today to congratulate this young man, a graduate of Barbara Jordan High School in the 18th Congressional District, my district in Houston, Texas. He is the oldest of 10 children and the first in his family to go to college. He is said to be an admirable and mature young man. Alexander is currently a corporal in the Marine Reserves. He has become the first person with military experience to head the Corps. Texas A&M University has the proud distinction of having the most graduates to enlist in our nation's armed forces when compared to other non-military academies. Mr. Alexander grew up in my home city of Houston. Our city is proud of his achievements. He has always wanted to attend Texas A&M. He was a gun-ho military that he participated, so gun-ho that he participated in the Texas A&M Junior Cadet Accession Program while still in high school. A week after enlisting in the Marine Corps, he received a letter of acceptance from Texas A&M. Yet true to his word and commitment, Alexander attended boot camp at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego. He is the kind of young American that we can be proud of. I am so proud of him. Congratulations to you and your family. This is a glory hallelujah day, and congratulations to Texas A&M for opening it up to being a student body president and Yell leader. Congratulations again. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Over the years, it's become harder to find the Made in America label, even though we know that a robust manufacturing industry is essential for our economy and creates jobs. Thankfully, we've got a great opportunity to help manufacturing, the Export-Import Bank, the entity that helps American companies export American goods. The U.S. Chamber has urged the bank's reauthorization because it supports American job creation. Since 2007, companies in my home state of Virginia have supported almost $1 billion in export sales because of XM, with those in my district alone supporting $130 million in exports. Last week, House Republicans brought up a bill to help small businesses, allegedly, that will cost taxpayers $46 billion. 85% of the Export-Import Bank's transactions aid those very same small businesses, and the bank provides a net benefit to taxpayers more than $4 billion over the last 6 years. The Export-Import Bank is good business, Madam Speaker. It creates jobs, it supports American companies, and it returns a profit to the American taxpayer. I urge my colleagues to support its reauthorization, and I yield back.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2146 as amended.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2146, a bill to amend Title 31, United States Code, to require accountability and transparency in federal spending and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, and the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The American people have a right to know that taxpayer dollars are well spent. We have a responsibility to stay up with the times. As government has grown, waste, fraud, and abuse and mismanagement has increased. Today, however, the technology is before us if we simply embrace it to do a far better job of accounting for every dollar spent on behalf of the American people. That's not just the American dollars that are spent by the federal government, but dollars passed on to private sector, to the states, to public entities, and nonprofits. Today, as those trillions of dollars are put out, we find that we don't know where they're spent. At best, we know the first place they went to. Under the Recovery Act, often called the stimulus, we can all disagree or agree on how the money was spent. But unlike previous appropriations, under that act, we found a way to do a better job of tracing the dollars. Tracing the dollars through recipient reporting, a system that, although it cost a little bit to do, ultimately, once set up, saves money. The Data Act before us today will literally track those trillions of dollars in a way not done outside of the Recovery Act. Quite frankly, we owe a debt of gratitude to the Recovery Board for showing us an effective system on which we could build. Just a few days ago, our committee, on a very bipartisan basis, evaluated the GSA's lavish spending. They explained to us that part of the way they spent $830,000+ was, in fact, to cobble together, as they put it, multiple baskets of money. Meaning, if you didn't know and couldn't trace how they spent their money, you wouldn't know that it was spent on a mind reader and a clown. You wouldn't know that those 10 trips essentially were privately or publicly funded trips so that key executives could have family vacations. With the Data Act, we expect that and many other wasteful practices to be brought to an end. Some of them will be brought to the end by the ranking member and our work on the committee, but a great many of them will be brought to bear by the American people being able to search online and learn what they currently cannot learn. The Data Act has been a bill that has been, unlike many, completely bipartisan. The minority and the majority have worked hand in hand. We come to you today with a bill that has been agreed to and that will save, I repeat, save billions of dollars. Additionally, we do, in fact, amend some of the abuses under the GSA scandal and do so based on the good work of Representative Dennis Ross of Florida, who introduced strong language to do exactly what we're doing today. So before we go on, let me just say that I want to thank the ranking member, because the work on this bill, the reason this bill is before us on suspension is that we've been able to work hand in hand with members of the majority and minority and with key staff on both sides to make sure that we have a bill that will pass the House, hopefully on a unanimous basis, and clearly will see the Senate send a message that it's time for accountability generated from bipartisan work in the House, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from California reserves his time. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first let me say that the Chairman Issa, has worked very closely with us as we co-sponsor this bill and has worked hard to make sure that all of its provisions are satisfactory to this side. And so he is absolutely right, Madam Speaker. It is truly a bipartisan bill, and again, I thank him. Taxpayers deserve to know how their money is being spent, and we on our committee, as we believe, not only us but all the Congress, have a responsibility to assure that those hard-earned tax dollars are spent effectively and efficiently. H.R. 2146, the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act, will make the federal government more accountable by making it easier for taxpayers to see where their money is going. By making government spending more transparent, we will hopefully reduce wasteful spending. This bill aims to capitalize on the success of the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board. Democrats in Congress created the board as a part of the Recovery Act in 2009. In addition to promoting job creation, economic activity, and long-term growth, the Recovery Act fostered unprecedented accountability and transparency in government spending. Under the administration's implementation and the RATS Board oversight, the Recovery Act has had historically low levels of waste, fraud, and abuse. The successful implementation of the Recovery Act should be a model for improving transparency and accountability in all federal spending. The DATA Act would do many of the same things the President directed by executive order in June of 2011. The DATA Act would establish a new independent commission to lead the government's efforts on federal spending, transparency, and accountability. The new commission would be authorized to set government-wide data standards and coordinate oversight of federal funds to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. I supported this legislation when it was considered by the Oversight Committee in June, but I had several concerns which I asked Chairman Issa to work with me in addressing. I commend the Chairman for bringing an amendment to the floor today that addresses those concerns. This bill also includes language requiring agencies to disclose spending on conferences and to justify their location and cost efficiency. The bill as amended also requires agencies to reduce their travel spending by 20% from fiscal year 2010 levels. The President directed agencies to reduce travel spending in an executive order issued on November 9, 2011. When he signed that executive order to cut waste and to promote efficient spending, he said this, and I quote, "We can't wait for Congress to act. We can't wait for them to get our fiscal house in order and make the investments necessary to keep America great. That's why today I'm signing an executive order that will build on our efforts to cut waste and promote more efficient spending across the government. We're cutting what we don't need so that we can invest in what we do need." End of quote. Let's show the President that Congress can and will act to reduce wasteful spending, and I urge my colleagues to join me, our Chairman, and our committee in supporting this legislation. And with that, Madam Speaker, I reserve my time.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from California.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd now like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Langford.
Gentleman from Oklahoma recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If people call my office and ask a simple question, something as simple as, how much did this cost? It's difficult for even a member of Congress to be able to track down all the details. How much was allotted for that grant? How much was actually spent? How much was that contract? How much was actually spent? How much does this agency spend on X number of programs or on this specific program? An individual hardworking taxpayer should be able to go research that out. Outside groups should be able to research that and be able to develop some way to systematically research and compare. Right now, we can't do that. We may do something as labor-intensive as mail them something or email them some things that we found, or maybe get a PDF document and be able to send to them, or send them to an agency website. But there's no systematic, structured way to be able to compare last year to this year, one agency to another agency, how this contract was done, how this grant was done. This is a great moment to be able to bring all that information together so that every group, including Congress, can pull that data, can research it. This gets to the essence of why transparency is such a big deal, because we want every single taxpayer to be able to look in and be able to see how their money is spent. That's an appropriate way to be able to respond to this. This also eliminates the duplication in reporting from a contractor or an agency that is actually trying to file this information, to not have to do it multiple times, to make it more efficient. This deals with the inconsistent requirements of reporting across different platforms. This deals with the basics of grant and contract recipients being able to also report in that data, as was done by the Recovery Board, which has been very successful in getting accurate information in. This also engages those outside individuals, grant writers, or grant recipients and contract recipients, to be able to come back in and process that data so we get real-time information. And it deals with one of the most basic things, efficient use of money. In this particular bill, dealing with all these conferences, reducing the cost of government conferences, finding some way to be able to put some parameters around them and structure so that money is not pulled from one place or another to be able to function at conference. A conference that doesn't have a $250,000 budget, spending $850,000 for a single event. I reiterate what we've said on both sides of the aisle. Transparency is not a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan bill. And whoever is in the White House and whoever is running agencies, just like Congress, is accountable to all of the American people. So this makes all of what we do publicly available, easy to be able to research, easy to be able to compare. It is a simple way to take this on. I'm strongly in support of this and grateful that it's a very bipartisan act. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma yields back. The gentleman from Maryland.
Madam Speaker, I grant the gentlelady from New York 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and for his leadership, and I thank the chairman for his leadership. This is truly a bipartisan effort and one that is sorely needed, as we can see from the hearing that we held last week in the Oversight and Government Reform Committee on the General Accounting Office. I mean, it was just outrageous that they would spend over $800,000 for some conference with mind readers and clowns when so many Americans are struggling and working hard. This bill will help prevent that this type of abuse will not happen again. And I am rising in strong support of H.R. 2146, the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act. It is good government. It is bipartisan. It is something that we can all agree on. It is common sense, and if it had been in place earlier, we could have possibly prevented the type of abuse that we are both dedicated to cleaning up. This bill will improve congressional oversight of how federal dollars are being spent. This bill does this by creating a single online portal where information about federal spending can be tracked. The bill requires recipients of federal grants, loans, and contracts to disclose how much money they receive and how that money is spent, and reduces the compliance burden on recipients of federal funds by streamlining reporting and establishing universal data standards. The Congressional Budget Office has certified that H.R. 2146 contains no intergovernmental or private sector mandates as defined by the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act, and would impose no additional costs on state, local, or tribal governments, end quote. This is designed to save money and to save the taxpayers and to allow the public to have insight into how these dollars are being spent, too. The Data Act capitalizes on the reporting required under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and President Obama's executive order establishing the Government Accountability and Transparency Board, and it will give legislative teeth to increase transparency and accountability over federal spending across the government. The Data Act also caps non-military travel spending at 20% below FY10 levels and limits both the number of and amount spent on agency conferences, which will save taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars per year. So this is truly something we can all agree upon. The technology is there. This bill puts the political will behind having this accountability. We do know how to track this. This will be in one centralized place. It will be available to the public, and it's an improvement in all ways. Currently available data on federal spending is incomplete, confusing, and inconsistent. This act would centralize and simplify the convoluted reporting that is in place now. And everything would be reported in the same way. And the bill also includes uniform reporting from the recipients of the federal funds. And very importantly, all of this would be available to the public. The independent commission that would be established by this would be responsible for publishing and monitoring federal spending. A number of diverse groups have come out in favor of it. I have roughly 20 groups that have written in support of the bill, from the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Government to the Taxpayers for Common Sense, to POGO, to OMB Watch. I'd like to, with unanimous consent, place their record and comments in the record.
Without objection.
I believe this is an important bill. I believe it will make government perform better, save taxpayers money, and the time of those who are tracking where these dollars are going. It is well overdue, and it should pass today. I urge all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote for this important piece of legislation. I yield my time back to the ranking member.
Gentlelady yields her time. Gentleman from California.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd now like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Ross, the author of many of the reforms in this bill.
Gentleman from Florida, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chairman, for yielding. I rise in strong support of the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act of 2011, also known as the Data Act. The Data Act finally does what America wants, opens up the books of government and lets the taxpayers see what is being spent. The bill also cuts agency travel spending by hundreds of millions of dollars per year, a great and necessary first step. By requiring federal agencies to report how their funds are spent and capping travel expenses, this common sense, bipartisan bill will bring much-needed accountability and transparency to federal spending. The Data Act should also send a clear message to bureaucrats here in Washington, D.C. The American taxpayer is watching, and they're sick and tired of the blank check mentality. Let's make sure that taxpayer dollars are no longer spent on lavish conferences, but with this bill we can also begin to crowdsource all federal spending. I thank the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for introducing this bill and for his leadership on transparency and accountability in government. Let's make sure that common sense becomes something common in government. Please join me in supporting the Data Act, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields his time. The gentleman from Maryland.
We continue to reserve.
Continues to reserve. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I have no other speakers other than myself for closing, so I'll reserve subject to closing.
Very well.
Gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Maryland.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
We, as the chairman stated and others have stated on this floor, we saw the abuses that took place at GSA, and we will certainly continue to follow them because I believe that all of us were very upset about those abuses, Madam Speaker. One of the things that we do believe is that legislation like this
is so important because it shines a light on how money is being spent. It won't solve all the problems, but it certainly will solve a lot of them. One of the things that Mr. Devaney said, who was over the stimulus bill in the RAT board there, is that he wanted to do certain things that not only would lay out a formula for accountability, but would prevent people from even abusing the system. And again, I think what we're doing here puts us out front of hopefully some things that people may have been thinking about doing. We don't even want them to think about it because there's so many people in our districts who work so hard to earn their money, and they don't mind paying their taxes. They don't mind sacrificing as long as they know that that money is being spent effectively and efficiently. And one of the things that we have to do, Madam Speaker, is to make sure that we establish and maintain a trust with them so that when they write that check, that they know it's going towards the roads that they want to see built, going towards the making sure the air is clean and making sure that the park rangers are present. They want to see that money spent properly. They don't want to see it spent on some bureaucrats flying around the country using the money in an improper way. So with this bill and this bipartisan bill, I think we send a message to the public that we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that they have as much information as possible about where that money goes when it leaves their checking account. And because of that, and because this bill is so significant, and because it is about a truly bipartisan effort, I'm hoping that we will have every member of the House voting in favor of it. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from California.
Thank you. I yield myself such time as I may consume to close.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, the expression we often hear about success and failure is that success has many fathers. Well, in fact, failure is an orphan. This bill will not be an orphan. In fact, the work of Ranking Member Cummings, along with Representative Maloney, Representative Sherman, Representative Colin Peters' son, and the former chairman of the full committee, Ed Towns, on just one side have been critical in getting this done. The support of Jason Chaffetz, of Dan Burton, of Blake Farenthold, of the gentleman who spoke a minute ago, James Langford, Mike Kelly, Tom Latham, Patrick McHenry, and Dennis Ross, all have been critical in this process. But perhaps less often heard would be, as the ranking member referred, former Inspector General and Chairman of the Recovery Board, Earl Devaney, has been critical to shepherding the process that has gone on over 2 Congresses, and I want to thank him personally while he's enjoying his well-earned retirement. Along with him was Vice President Joe Biden, who has been supportive and helped us in this process and held numerous meetings at the White House on behalf of it. In the Senate, Mark Warner of Virginia has championed and introduced the companion product, making it bipartisan in both houses. Additionally, as I think the ranking member alluded to, the Sunlight Foundation, the Project for Government Oversight, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the Americans for Tax Reform, the Data Transparency Coalition, and XBRL US have all been critical. And the last one I mentioned is particularly critical because the need for standards that ultimately are set that allow for this transparency are going to come not from us in government, but from organizations who have open and transparent capability that we will leverage. All of these and more are to be thanked today. I want to close by saying the winners with this effort will be the American people. And they'll be the American people because when this is fully implemented, American people who are used to Googling for information outside of government will find it possible to get meaningful information on where their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent just as quickly. And that's the goal of our committee, is to recognize that the 100 or so staff and members on both sides of the aisle, the Oversight Committee, cannot protect the American people alone. The 12,000 or so members of the Inspector General's staff throughout government cannot protect the American people alone. But with data transparency and more access and sunlight available more broadly, we believe that these organizations can, in fact, have the kinds of whistleblowers and information providers that will allow us to scrub the balance sheet, to wrench out waste, fraud, and abuse in our government at any level. So I join with the ranking member in urging its unanimous support and yield back.
All time having expired, the question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2146 as amended? Those in favor signify by saying aye. And opposed will say no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 3336 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3336, a bill to ensure the exclusion of small lenders from certain regulations of the Dodd-Frank Act.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Lucas, and the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Peterson, will each control 20 minutes, and the Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks on the bill H.R. 3336.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise to voice my support for this bill. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my committee's ranking member, Mr. Peterson, and his staff for their diligent work on this bill on behalf of end users and small business lenders. We have a long-standing tradition of bipartisanship at the Agriculture Committee, and their work was invaluable. And I'd like to thank Representative Hartzler for her leadership on H.R. 3336 on behalf of small business institutions and the businesses they serve. I would also like to acknowledge and thank Representative Holtgren and Representative Boren, whose legislation, H.R. 3527, which will not be considered today. As a result of their leadership and Mr. Peterson's support, many of the critical issues for end users addressed in H.R. 3527 were resolved by the CFTC in its final definitions rule. I think we can reasonably feel assured that agricultural cooperatives and other end users out in the countryside won't be unnecessarily deemed swap dealers and regulated like the largest financial institutions. As I said from the outset, if the CFTC on its own resolves concerns we have raised for months in our committee room, we would not proceed with legislation. And that's what we've done with H.R. 3527. However, concerns of the implementation of Title VII remain, and so we are here today to proceed with H.R. 3336. This bill addresses issues that are important to community and farm credit banks, organizations which are instrumental to the economic vitality of our towns and rural communities. In the Dodd-Frank Act, Congress was careful to ensure that new regulations wouldn't impose unnecessary costs on small institutions that might deter them from extending credit to businesses across America. Small banks pose very little risk to our financial system. Within the banking system, 96% of the notional value of derivatives is held by the 5 largest banks. The very small remaining percentage of the derivatives exposure in our financial system is spread across hundreds of small institutions. That's why Congress never intended for these community leaders to be regulated, lenders I should say, to be regulated in the same fashion as the largest global financial institutions. This bill aims